Hello and welcome to the 2TAKES podcast with Shannon and April. Today's topic is sometimes you have to unlearn things that you've once learned. Have you thought about that? Unlearning something? Before I start in, April, what's your initial thoughts on the unlearning of things?
Why do you have to put me on the spot like this? Totally thought you were going to
go. 2TAKES.
Totally thought you were going to go first. We were actually just discussing this, but as you guys will often see, my takes tend to focus more inward on businesses. Shannon's takes tend to focus more outwards on businesses. So, I'll be curious to see what Shannon has to say too. Awesome. But, in terms of sometimes you have to unlearn things. So, the first thing that came to mind was, and I know I talked about this last time too, working in healthcare prior to being here, you spend a lot of time working with acronyms, just, medical jargon that's shortened down, right? And I remember this vividly from orientation, which would have been close to 20 years ago now, that sometimes you forget that not everybody knows what you know. And sometimes you forget that not everybody understands the things that you understand and that you are saying. So there was an elderly man, ill, family brought him in, and nurse came out to the doctor and said, hey, the gentleman in whatever, room 20, SOB. So most of us, you think SOB, you're like, wow, that's a rapid non-medical assessment. Like,
yeah, that's pretty bold assessment to just.
That's right. You've been with him for 30 seconds. Dear Lord, what did he say to you? Well, SOB in the medical realm is short of breath. He's short of breath. But the family heard SOB. They were heightened emotionally anyway. And they were like, whoa. Like, why are you making these judgments on him? And so they literally, after that, and I don't know if that happened at the hospital that I worked at or if that was just a story that gets told frequently. I'm sure it has happened. But we did have, and we would continue to have, education and re-education processes about making sure that you were speaking, when you're speaking to someone who is not on the same level as you, not necessarily intellectually, but maybe
industry specific,
industry specific, whatever it may be, that you need to understand that not everyone is going to have that same knowledge, and you have to temper yourself and sort of unlearn all the jargon and slow down a little bit and speak their language. Instead of forcing them to speak your language, you need to speak their language. So that's one example that I can think of.
We even talk about that. So April has told you guys that she works at my marketing agency. And part of our mission statement specifically says not using meaningless jargon. Because one of the things that I think is still true today, but when we put that into place, it talked about everybody felt like they could razzle and dazzle their prospective clients by all of the marketing jargon. And so what I felt is maybe that works on some, but does it really build trust and partnership with your client? It says that you know a lot, but yet I'm making uneducated decisions because you're keeping me on the outside of this loop. And where I always felt like they know their industry and their business so well. We know marketing. If we bring those things together, then it's the best of both worlds. So why talk meaningless jargon? Why not use that as an education point for us to be on the same page, build trust, take the time to let them know what we're doing? Because in a very short amount of time, if they are on the outside of understanding and then someone comes in and educates them, then they're like, well, I have more trust now with this person. And inadvertently, we put ourselves in that position. It's not kind to them. It's not productive to our end goal or their goal. So much to what April's talking about is jargon's everywhere. And that's one way of unlearning something on what we need to do to bring people into our understanding and be on the same page. What's interesting too is my take is just kind of talking about adaptation. So talking about change, and we all experience change. That was a topic that we talked about last time. So this dovetails off of that quite easily, is that we're always promised change. And so with that process of change, sometimes we just have to unlearn things. So we make space to learn new things, for one. For two, think of all the things that change. If we just even simplify this into just processes or technology, even on the marketing background, with what didn't work 5 years ago may work today because the consumers changed, the technology in which we can deploy it, our team may have changed. Our focus or what we're offering may have changed to be a better fit for what we chose in marketing. Maybe our message needs to be refined, but the media didn't need to be. So there's all of these questions that take a considerable amount of reflection, planning, and just really the mindset of going, I'm okay with change and I'm okay with learning something different or applying my knowledge in a different way. So I was kind of referencing here my notes a little bit that situations of rapid change will be easier for those that are flexible, adaptive, and productive. They will need to evolve to survive and have patience in learning. And so I think about that going as an internal evaluation is, are we even willing to unlearn something, accept something new? So, if we're talking to businesses and we say, hey, you got to have processes, protocols, standard operating procedures, all of those in place. And then also saying, and don't expect these not to change, but will the likelihood be that they all change at once? Doubtful. You may have one piece that needs to change or one piece that needs to improve or adapt, not usually all of them. So when we get into that mindset of change, it's like, let's think about, is it a big change or just a part of a change? My husband always said is the most expensive words is because we've always done it that way, because it sticks you in a place that is not progressive to where business needs to be, often needs to go, and we need to change. One of the interesting things that I wanted to bring up with this topic is denial is not our friend. If we're going to deny changes upon us, that's going to put us behind the 8 ball from the get-go. So denial it needs to be short-lived. I mean, there is moments that it's like, this is not happening. This is not happening. But if we can shorten that window a little bit, it helps us then to be productive in what we need to unlearn and then learn. So 3 steps that I put into place here as we think about unlearning is, number 1, having acceptance. Having acceptance that change is going to happen, having acceptance that I need to roll with it, having acceptance that I am going to have to learn. Number 2 is to sort out sources for the learning. So if we know we need to unlearn something, it's a little easier to let that go if we know exactly where we need to go to learn the new stuff. It's kind of like if you're on the edge and you got to jump to the bridge. It'd be easier to jump to the bridge if you saw it than if you had to jump through fog and hope to God the bridge is there, right? So identifying where those places are that you're going to learn and be supportive. And number 3, just having a mindset around change and adaptation in those moments. Those are the 3 things that will set us up for success with the thought of unlearning to learn.
I have my DISC assessment right here. And I'm not kidding you. Like I have different color highlights for different things. But your DISC assessment will tell you what your and correct me if I'm wrong, because this is off the cuff, Shannon. But your DISC assessment will tell you like what your natural sort of unadulterated style is, and then what your adaptive style is.
Yep. And personality, communication, if you do motivators, what your go-to is and what you feel like you need to be in the workforce. Like, how do you have to adapt for the role that you're playing?
Right. Yeah. And I think the biggest takeaway that I took from that was learning more about myself, learning some of the things that I do great and some of the things that I really need to work at. Some of the things that I tend to gloss over, that in a management position or just in a work position, you need to unlearn that particular behavior and start doing something different. And then also expanding that, being able to see everyone else's DISC assessments as well, all of the employees that I work with, knowing how I can best interact with them, support them, teach them. It may be completely different than what I'm used to or what I think works. And so there's unlearning and learning there too. And I think that that's huge. I think it's a great opportunity to be able to expand who you are as a person, and really learn about yourself and about those around you and how you can support each other better. But you do have to have a shift in mindset and a change in how you do things, how you unlearn something to learn something new, be it about yourself or the person next door to you.
I like that. And I think we should do probably a whole segment. Well, I'll promise it to you right now on DISC. And so I will share that with you for sure, because that is a very tactical way of thinking about learning something new and maybe unlearning how you relate and communicate with people that will benefit you. So I love that you brought that up, April, because it is a tool that is certainly available if you would like to learn more about it, but we'll bring you some more information on that in future podcasts.
Yes.
I researched, I'm like, okay, what are some of the things? And we'll put this in an accessible file for you to contemplate. But there were a few things that I thought, well, what are things that we might have to unlearn? We've talked about business. We've talked about processes. We've talked about maybe technology in the workforce. We talked about communication. What about on the personal level? So these were kind of things that I'm like, oh, I didn't think about those things. So I'm going to give you a few just to ponder in the next week until we meet again. So I feel like I've just given the church until we meet again. Church, what is it? We had a church that sang until we meet again, and that's what I'm thinking about. But so in this week, one of them is people's expectation of you is your responsibility. What if we have to unlearn that is just not true? That is their expectation of you. It certainly is not your responsibility to pick up and take forward. Typically, especially when it's not tied to something that you have committed to. Maybe it's an assumption, or maybe it's something that I'm putting upon you because I don't want to do it myself. It's like, we don't always have to live up to everyone else's expectations. So I thought that was kind of interesting. One is your traits are fixed to never move, expand, improve. And I think April really touched on that with DISC. It's like, what happens if I have these traits and I'm unaware to capitalize on my strengths or improve my weaknesses or understand someone else's strengths or weaknesses? What if we just said, "Is me, this is the way I am today." It's a fixed trait. It's like, I don't believe that to be true. I do think that we always will have strengths and we will always have weaknesses. And to be honest, working on weaknesses to a degree is fine. But if you put 100% of your efforts into fixing or improving a weakness as opposed to playing to your strength, that will probably not serve you the best long term. And so being okay that we have weaknesses, but playing to our strengths is huge. A couple others that I had here was success is the finish line. That's interesting. I watched something this weekend on Richard Branson, right? He's fascinating to me for so many different reasons. I'm sure
you're going to say Richard Simmons, by the way.
Well, he is fascinating to me for different reasons too. But, you look at Richard Branson, and he has had success over success over success. What's interesting is one of the reasons that he came into my realm of intrigue is because he is highly dyslexic. Didn't know if you knew that. But there's reasons that intrigues me is because my son is dyslexic. And you think about that going, he's had success over success over success. And so if someone like that felt like success was the finish line, then he would have had one success at most. But he felt like that's not the finish line. I can do more. I can do more. So I thought that was interesting is what does success look like first and foremost, so you recognize it when you have it. And two, that you can do it over and over again. And guess what? I am told that it's easier to find success the second, the third, the fourth time, which makes sense because we've already learned skills we didn't have the first time out the gate. So I think that was interesting. The last one I'll share, and then I'll put more of these either in the description or in a place that you can download because I think they are so important. But one of the last one that I will share with you is discomfort is awful. Okay. So on that note is we never, ever learn in our comfort zone. Never once. Because it's comfortable because we know it. So the only way we can know more things, expand our knowledge, and grow as a human or in our skill set is to put ourselves in uncomfortable, discomfortable places so we can expand those things. So if we have the mindset that discomfort is awful, guess what? We're never going to grow beyond where we are today. And so those were just a few challenges of things to have to unlearn and be comfortable with some new learnings so we can move past where we are today. So I leave you with those things to ponder. I think I gave you three things to think about in reflection for the next week. And then I'll put more up there so we can continue to challenge these mindsets and set ourselves up for success in weeks to come. So that kind of completes this week of the 2 Takes podcast with Shannon and April. See you next week.
Bye.
Bye.
I have